Today I'm here to talk about a relatively new product on the market. This is the second run of flat acrylic blades from Kyberlight sabers. Now the first run was discontinued shortly after it started for reasons that I won't go into in this video, but this is their second run, and it consists of 4 different models. The samurai blade, which is basically like a katana blade. The cutlass, which is basically a cutlass. This one has grooves on the back, like sort of sword breaker grooves that kind of have some sharp points on them. Much wider up at the tip than it is down at the base here. The Viking, which is based off of a European sword. It's got a blood groove down the middle, rather wide design, comes to a point. And the Belgian, which is kind of a rapier style blade, slimmer than the Viking, still European style, and without the blood groove. Alright, so those 4 models. Today I wanted to talk about the general blade design of all 4 of these. I'll try to handle them all together, and then at the end of the video I'll talk about them each individually. So let me start off with the things that I liked about these. These blades are rather solid designs. Okay, they're, with the exception of the cutlass, which has kind of some embellishing that I don't particularly care for on here, the rest of them are relatively straightforward. Katana blade looks like a katana blade. The rapier-style Belgian is probably my favorite of the batch, and it's just a plain, straight, flat blade. All right, so design on these is iconic, based off of swords that you've been able to find around for a long time. And Kyberlight, this time around, this is their own take on these sort of iconic blade designs. They're still very recognizable. So the design of these is a solid design. Another thing I like about these is that the blades themselves are pretty durable. Okay, now I'll talk about durability a little bit later also when I talk about negatives, but when you're dealing with an acrylic blade, you're dealing with something that is not designed to be dueled with. These blades will snap if they're hit on things or dropped. But the Kyberlight material that they use is not an acrylic. It is something softer than an acrylic. What that means is that the blade itself is a little bit more durable than you're going to get with an acrylic. What I mean by that is it's more resistant to scuffs and scratches. You can actually put dings in this, but they come out as clear and they don't diffuse. So the blade itself, in terms of packing it, carrying it around, putting it in a sheath, it's a little bit harder to scratch and to scuff up than an acrylic is. Alright, so another thing I like about these is the blade plug. Now there's some positives and negatives to the blade plug, but in terms of the positives, we have a solid blade plug. Okay, solid piece of acrylic or of this acrylic blend that they use with the tang of the blade coming down into it. Now the good part about this solid design on this is that unlike other acrylic blades where you're dealing with a hollow tube with the tang of the blade coming down into it, there's that disconcerting moment with other acrylics where you're tightening the set screw and you hear this little pop. Sometimes that's the acrylic weld because you've tightened it too tight and the acrylic weld is popping loose, and sometimes the blade can start to wobble and you have to reset. Since these are solid, you can tighten the screw kind of into it if you need to and create a little divot. But it's not going to crack the blade by over-tightening the set screw, which is kind of a nice design feature. Alright, in terms of neutral, the lightning pattern I'm going to call a neutral on these. It's a relatively uncomplicated lightning pattern, but it does get the idea across. The pattern that they use on these is hand-etched in, but it's not freehand. It's, I'm guessing that it's by some sort of stencil, because as I'm told, the lightning pattern will be the same from katana blade to katana blade, but it's different between the different models. For instance, in the Viking, the lightning pattern comes up both sides and then sort of tapers into the middle. The lightning pattern is also different from side to side, which means that when you turn it on, you get sort of the illusion of complexity as both sides light up and you can see both lightning patterns through the blade at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and give you a close-up on the lightning pattern on the Belgian, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about this a little bit. Okay, so in terms of neutral, like I said, the lightning pattern, it looks nice, it does its job, it's not as complex and ornate as I've seen, but it gets the job done. That's really my only neutral point on these. Now let me talk about some of the stuff that really needs to be worked on these blades. Now, before I get going too far on this, I will say that I had to reshoot this video because of this section. I'll show you why in just a moment. So let's go ahead and hit the negatives. First off, the blade plug. Now, the blade plug, as I mentioned, is a positive because it's kind of a sturdy blade plug and you can tighten the set screw into it pretty deep. The negative on this is the diffusion on the blade plug. Because they've made it solid, there's nothing to stop the light, which comes in here, from going straight up and out these pieces to either side of the blade. Okay, it comes up the middle, it goes down the blade just fine, but you see that bar in the middle? And you see the space on either side of that bar? The light also shines straight out of that space. Okay, what that means is that it loses a lot of light in a flashlight-like direction. Now, if you've ever caught a lightsaber with no blade in it in the eye when somebody was messing around with it, you'll know what that feels like. The unfiltered, undiffused light directly from a lightsaber in your eye. Now, with that solid blade plug, let me go ahead and show you here. There we go. Okay, now watch the light on my hands. My battery's getting a little bit low, hence the ghost clashes. But you could see that when my hand got up to here, I was getting the full force of the light. And when it got down to here, I was getting the full force of the light. So the light is this entire spectrum. So if you're spinning it around in public, you really need to watch other people's eyes or you're going to be beaming them with the light from this. Now, Kyberlight could probably easily deal with this by putting a piece of metallic film on either side of this. You could do it on your own aftermarket. Just put a little piece of metallic or reflective tape right there. That would take care of it. The light would only travel up the blade. Alternately, a lot of other acrylic blades have a little bend in there that focuses the light up, and maybe some cloudy material here like hot glue or something like that prevents the light from being full force right here. So, not a big problem, something that's easy to deal with. If you've got a Kyberlight, you're used to sort of tinkering with things on your end anyways. The biggest downfall of these blades is, I mentioned that the blade itself was more durable and resistant to scuff than a standard acrylic. The flip side of that is the blade is more fragile than a standard acrylic in terms of breakage from use. Now let me go ahead and show you why I had to reshoot this video. Now that was from the first time I shot this, and what I was talking about or trying to show to people was the wobble. Now since these things are an acrylic blend, that durability comes at the expense of rigidity in the blade, which means that it wobbles. Okay, this is what I was trying to show people in that video that I just showed you, and you can see what happened. Okay, because of the solid set on the blade plug, okay, all of the tension from this one, which is the heaviest of the blades, all of the tension from that wobble, because it didn't just try to remain rigid, that wobble created a lot of tension right here where the blade meets the plug, and it just snapped. Right. Now that is a danger that you run with these blades because Kyberlight, unlike a lot of other acrylic blades also, they made these things all 36 inches. So these things are full standard blade size. Most of the time when you're dealing with acrylics, you're dealing with things that are about that long rather than this long. So the size is nice and intimidating for a costume piece, but it makes it a little bit harder or makes it a little bit more fragile in the end run because of that wobble, creating the tension right where it meets the blade plug. All right, so that's a good example of what not to do with one of these blades. Okay, the reason that it did it with this blade, but it didn't do it with the one I just showed that to you with, is that the Viking blade was the heaviest of them. All right, this one right here, I wouldn't even try to show you the wobble with this cutlass because I know for certain it would break. You see how heavy it is down here and how narrow it gets to be right here? that would create quite a weak spot right here at the plug, and this thing would snap. All right, the slimmer blades, like the katana and the Belgian, are pretty solid and pretty durable, and you can actually perform with them and spin them around and toss as long as you don't drop them or hit them on things. These two smaller blades are actually really nice designs. Even though they are longer, they're durable, they don't have the wind resistance, you don't have to worry too much about the wobble because they don't weigh as much. But when you start dealing with the two wider, heavier models like the Viking and the Cutlass, you really have to worry about what you do with them because there is a real limit to what you're going to be able to without breaking them off right here at the plug. All right, so my end result, or my end evaluation on these. I think there's definitely a place in the market for these for a couple of reasons. The cost on these things is relatively low. Under a lot of circumstances, you could end up paying $80 to $100 to $200 for an acrylic blade. The Kyberlight blades run closer to $60, which is a pretty nice low buy-in point for something like this. They're not covered by the same warranty that their other blades are. Their other blades have a lifetime warranty against breakage. The flat blades don't because of the fact that they are fragile and they are not designed to be used, and they are pretty dang prone to breaking, as you just saw. All right, but the price point is a solid point in their favor. Also a point in their favor is that these things are stock models. A lot of times when you're dealing with flat acrylic blades, you're dealing with things that are made for you, that you get on a waiting list, and they take quite a while to get. There's quite a backlog. These four models are things that they're planning on having in stock. I kind of hope they redesign or end up redesigning these two larger models to make them a little bit more durable and to fix some of that issue that led to the breakage on this. I mean, this would be a perfectly intimidating blade if it was a ½ inch narrower and like 4 inches shorter. But so the cost, the availability definitely means that there is a place in the market for these. The overall effect of the blade is sound. In terms of whether or not I would personally recommend them, I think if this is a design that you're looking for, the Belgian is a pretty solid blade. I really like this one, and I especially like, if you've got a Kyberlight, I like how it looks on this crossguard hilt. Okay, the katana. If you're looking for a katana blade for a katana saber, like a saber forged Ronin, then it's a pretty good choice. It's nothing too fancy. It definitely says katana at first sight, and it does what it's supposed to do. It lights up with the lightning, and it looks impressive. And to a certain extent, this one as well. You can spin it around. You can do some tricks with it as long as you're careful. So my evaluation on these two is, I like these two, and I will be definitely using these in future. My evaluation on these two bigger models, this is for a photo shoot. This is not for use. This is the same thing. For a photo shoot, for limited use, maybe for a con because it is straighter and a little bit more durable than this thing, but as you can see, not for any kind of vigorous use, not for messing around with, and you should be prepared if you get one of these larger ones. If you're not careful with it, you're going to experience what I experienced. So, end result, I'm about 50-50 on these. I like their smaller ones, don't quite like their bigger ones. Hope they make them smaller. But one of the nice things that I've experienced about Kyberlight over the years is that as I shoot these videos and as they get feedback from other people, they're generally pretty open to changing things up and trying to fix things where they see there are problems. They redesigned the plastic blend on the blade to make it diffuse light a little bit better after their initial release. So I'm hoping that this run will be a sign of better things to come. They'll take some design notes to heart and maybe come out with something that is just as versatile as this, but maybe lacking some of the weaknesses of this run. Right? Hopefully this review has been of use to you. If it has, please join me back for others, and I'll see you in the next video.